I am live. I am live. And I am in the living room, and there is Granny Smith. Hi, Granny Smith. Hi, dear. She's a sweetheart. Surrounded by records. There's Miss Kitty. Surrounded by cats. There's Monkey. Hi, Monkey. More records. But those aren't the records we're looking at today. Those are not the records that we're looking at today. We're going down the hall into the office. See, these are the records that are in the main collection that are in the living room right now. The bins right there, 1, 2, and 3, over in the corner there. And I see Josh is here. Hi, Josh. And these are the cabinets that I built for her because my wife wanted cabinets that look kind of like the ones that you might see in the record store. And they hold about 500 a piece. So I built them, and she did put the stain on them and finished them. But again, those aren't the ones we're looking at today. We're going to go down the hall to the office, and we're going to take a look at the records that I've got separated for my own listing. And there's my flock joining us this afternoon. So we're going to switch down the hall here. And I turn the light on in the hallway because you don't want to accidentally step on a cat. Some of them are dark, and it's difficult to see them. And my flock says it's 9 a.m. You must be in California. See, that's my an additional record player, and then my block of albums that I keep in the milk crate. Remember when you used to keep records in a milk crate? Who's that old? Yeah, my flock says, please don't step on a cat. I try. So we'll go ahead and grab the crate. Yeah, that's the personal stash. The stuff that I've been listening to while I've been sitting in the office. And a little light. And take a look at some audiophile goodness. For those of you who are not familiar with the term, of course, an audiophile is somebody who really enjoys music. Just really enjoys music. Let me just get that adjusted. Try to adjust it. I don't know what I'm doing. You can see Aerosmith right there. It's a good bit of records. I don't know how many are actually in here. I know that collectively we have like more than 2,000, but I don't know exactly how many. But there's Aerosmith, the classic album. You hear the cats racing around in the background. Not in the best shape, the jacket, but the vinyl plays really well. And just like with comic books or anything else that you collect, the jacket does matter. It does matter, but I'm happy with it like this. And it's got some stuff on here like Dream On, Walking the Dog, so on. It doesn't have Train Keeps a Rollin', which they did a great rendition of, even though it's not originally their song, it's a cover. And Shelby Collector, or no, Shelby Rockstar, I read that completely wrong. Have you tried a tube amplifier, decent speakers? No, I don't have that out here. And we are looking for a better system, but it's going to be a minute. They just retired because Steven Tyler fractured his larynx again. And this time he's just totally hung it up. So there's going to be no more Aerosmith. And I'm wondering if they're going to sell out their catalog, because that's what happened with Kiss when it was discovered that Kiss was miming their entire act. They were on stage because they had their final tour. They weren't even playing the instruments, they were faking all of it and got called out on it, and they've officially retired. And they turned around and they sold their whole catalog. So they don't even own their music anymore. It's the death of a legacy. The Association's greatest hits. This is a nice album. This is good stuff. And it has stuff on here like Cherish or Windy. You know that one. Everyone knows it's windy. That was the Association. Let me see. The Magic of Boney M. Boney M. And it wasn't all it was imagined to be with Boney M. If anyone is familiar with Boney M, they've got a couple of, and LPH gave me this album. They've got like Daddy Cool on here, and they've got Rasputin on here, which are the songs that Boney M is best known for. Boney M sang only in concert, but it's not his voice on the records. It's not his voice on the record, it's the producer, who is also the producer of Milli Vanilli. Think about that. You know what it is, though? The Daddy Cool and the Rasputin, which are original sounds for Boney M, are the best tracks on here, and the rest of it actually isn't that great, being honest. Brothers Johnson. Brothers Johnson produced some good stuff. This isn't the best album, though, so I'll probably... they do have Light Up the Night, Stomp, but I've heard better stuff from them. But I felt like listening to Brothers Johnson. Bruce Springsteen, the Born in the USA album. Probably his best album, this one. A lot of controversy around him now because he's on one of his final tours and he's charging insane ticket prices and he's getting called out for it. But they've got stuff on here like I'm on Fire, which is actually kind of a creepy song if you read the lyrics. Hey, little girl, is your daddy home? Yeah, okay, Bruce. But Born in the USA, Cover Me, stuff like that. Glory Days. This is probably his best album. I've heard other stuff by Bruce Springsteen, and honestly, it's pretty bad. It's like 1:35 in the morning a.m. in a nightclub playing in front of an audience of 9 while the bartender is yelling out for last call. That's what the rest of his stuff sounds like. Except for this album. Captain and Tennille, Sounds of Joy. Captain... And it's like, Captain and Tennille, she's actually pretty good. Captain doesn't do much. He just plays the piano. It's really just Tennille, quite frankly. Or Tony. Tony Tennille. But there's some good stuff on here, actually. It's kind of a fun album. Even Muskrat Love, I'll say it. And I pointed this out on the live stream that we did Saturday because, we just picked these up recently. When you look at the pictures, and I'm like, golly, could your eyes be any more dilated? I mean, the biggest pupils I've ever seen. It is. I know it's probably the lighting, but he looks like he's sitting on a hospital bed in the emergency room going, seriously, you don't need to do a blood test. I'm not on anything, I swear. That's what he looks like. Chic. I've got a couple of Chic albums here. Chic is really good. I like Chic. Good Times, Can't Stand to Love You, Will You Cry. I've got 2 Chic albums here. This one's better. The Freak, I Want Your Love. You know what I mean? There's some good stuff on that came from Chic back in the day. Obviously, it's the 70s, And I like a lot of 70s music, including this kind of stuff, of funk and disco and all of that. show me a negative disco song. It was very positive. There's rarely a negative disco song. Off the top of my head, I can name one. It was There But For the Sake of God. If you look up There But For the Sake of God disco, that song it tells a story. There's a really good story in it, but it's not a positive upbeat lyrics. And it's one of the few examples of disco that's like that. David Bowie, this is the Let's Dance album, and there's David Bowie trying to look tough. It's kind of hard to do when you've got a big blonde pompadour haircut. Robert says, why would they do that? Kiss, I mean, sell everything. They sold the catalog, as I understand it, after they finished their retirement tour. And like I said, there was a lot of controversy because because they were miming everything. They sold the catalog. And it's like, well, shit, what was the last, 50 years about then? I don't know. But David Bowie is a really good singer. This is a decent album. This is a pretty decent album. China Girl's on here. Let's Dance is on here. Let's Dance was a very bizarre music video. It was. You watch the video and it's like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? And as you can see, my musical taste is all over the place. I'm not locked into any kind of a genre. Neither is my wife. She's pretty much the same way with her musical tastes as well. What are you doing? What's all that noise about? Monkey! This is why he's called Monkey right here. What's all the noise about, Monkey? Huh? What are you trying to do? Wow, I had a little flub there apparently. A little Wi-Fi error. I hope everybody is still there, because that was like, what, 10 seconds? But yeah, our musical tastes are all over the place. We don't adhere to just like one or two styles of music, kind of like on the Blues Brothers when they went into the nightclub and he says, "Hey, what kind of music do you guys listen to here?" And the woman says, "Oh, we listen to all kinds, country and western." De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, which and there's the Lady Pop Hunter. There's my wife joining us here today looking at De La Soul. I was just talking about you. Shelby Rockstar says home audio is a rabbit hole. You start to discover nuances that make it all sound better, and suddenly you feel the need to listen to everything all over again like it's the first time. Yeah, maybe. This is not an original pressing. This is a repress. The original pressing on this is like very expensive. Very expensive, so I had to settle for a repress, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with. Look at that vinyl. It's pink. And they sampled Schoolhouse Rock. See right here? The magic number it uses a sample from 3 is the magic number from Schoolhouse Rock. But De La Soul, probably one of the last true hip-hop albums right here before it started getting really raunchy and nasty. Yeah, I went there. Don Ho's greatest hits. Which he only has one. It's Tiny Bubbles. That's the one that made him famous. It's fun. It's actually kind of a fun album. Don Ho's greatest hits. A lot of it is sing-along kind of stuff, with a couple of Hawaiian words thrown in here and there. Here's somebody that everybody in the world has totally forgotten about. Don Ho, everybody. He was a celebrity in the 60s. The Brady Bunch knew who he was. Duran Duran. 7. And the Ragged Tiger. Who remembers how huge this band was in the 1980s? Seriously, they were massive. Duran Duran was massive in the 80s. And of course, there you've got The Reflex, which has some very confusing lyrics. New Moon on Monday. Some good stuff on here. Good stuff on here. And I actually had this album when I was a kid. I bought it myself. I bought this myself from Caldors. Anybody familiar with the old Caldors? They were kind of like Kmart, primarily on the East Coast. But I bought this album myself at Caldors when I was in junior high school. There's the Fat Boys. And this is really indicative of 80s rap. Probably one of the best one of the best 80s rap albums right here is the Fat Boys, in my opinion. The lyrics make more sense than Run DMC's lyrics, I'll tell you that. But every continuation, every album that came after this one, it wasn't as good as the original, in my opinion. I think this was their best one, was the first album, the Fat Boys. And they had that music video. The person who sold this album provided this whole breakdown here. You know, Jailhouse Rap, Stick 'em, Can You Feel It, Fat Boys, The Place to Be, Human Beatbox, Don't You Dog Me. And they filmed this whole music video and it was used in the movie Crush Groovin', because they co-starred in it with Run DMC and LL Cool J and others. That they sat in the Sbarro's, what do you call it, a buffet, which I didn't even know Sbarro's had buffets, and they ate and ate and ate and ate and ate, and apparently they really ate most of that. Gene Autry's greatest hits, and it's like, Gene Autry, this is the guy who invented the concept of country music. Before they called it that, it was called cowboy music. But Gene Autry was just huge. See, You Are My Sunshine. He wrote and sang that. Back in the Saddle, South of the Border. This is an interesting album. I think so. But he was huge. He had comic books. He was in something like 67, 68 movies that he starred in. He was in movie serials, radio dramas, stuff like that. Home on the Range, he sang that. He wrote and sang that. You know the song Home on the Range. He also did the music for the original Rankin Bass, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. George Thorogood and the Destroyers. George Thorogood. And you know this one. Kids from Philly, One Way Ticket, Goodbye Baby. It's not some of his best known tracks here. Robert wants to know what year Gene Autry was active. I want to say, you're talking 30s and 30s through the 1960s? Trying to remember. It's not his biggest hits like Bad to the Bone and stuff like that, but this is a pretty good album. He's got a very unique voice. Grace Jones, Nightclub. Most of this is pretty bad. Actually, she was huge in the 80s. Everybody knew who Grace Jones was. She was in a Bond film. She was a Bond girl. But Pull Up to the Bumper is probably the best song on here. The thing with this, what makes it bad, is that there's no specific genre being adhered to. Pull Up to the Bumper Baby is like a disco slash funk song, but then the next song sounds like yacht rock, and the next song sounds like country, and the next song, you get the idea. It's all over the place. It's like, pick a damn genre, will you? And most of it is cover songs anyway. But I like Pull Up to the Bumper Baby. Let's Live for Today, the Grassroots. And this is a 60s album. This is something that a band that most people have probably forgotten about. Let's Live for Today is probably their best known song, quite frankly. And this used to belong to John. We get a lot of albums through buying out lots. You know, you go on Facebook Marketplace or whatever and you buy out lots. And you find a lot of stuff that way dirt cheap because people, like, they go in the attic or whatever, or a basement, and they're like, oh, there's all these albums. I don't give a shit about these albums. I'll just put them all up for next to nothing. And that's how we end up with them. And what does this one say? The Dream Times. We're all, excuse me, because it only, the comment only stays up for a second. Where all these from the same collection? Quite a mix. No, these are not all from the same collection right here. But yeah, we do get some odd mixes when we buy out collections, though. But there's Janet Jackson's Control album. And, you know, Control, Nasty, What Have You Done For Me Lately, and so on. Songs you probably remember from back when Janet Jackson was still relevant. Because she's really kind of faded away. Really kind of faded away. Jethro Tull, the Aqualung album, probably the best known album from the band Jethro Tull, because of course there is no actual Jethro Tull. That's just the name of the band. And yes, he will convince you that you can rock out with a flute. And the whole album ties together. You could almost do like a rock opera off this album because the songs all tie together. KC and the Sunshine Band. Yes. I love KC and the Sunshine Band. Look at that. Shake Your Booty. Let's Go Party. I'm Your Boogeyman. Keep It Comin', Love. I'm a fan of KC. He's still around. He can't do it like he could, trust me. But he's still around doing like casino acts and stuff. It's not the same. Kool and the Gang's Greatest Hits. That stuff, more funky stuff, Soul Vibrations, Jungle Boogie. That's probably one that most people would recognize a lot easier. Cocktail Girls. There's an oddity for you. This is something that most of you probably have no idea. This is from Kinetic Circus is the name of the band. And if you haven't figured out, these are in alphabetical order. Cocktail Girls by Kinetic Circus, which is essentially an 80s punk band. It's odd. It's kind of odd, but it's pretty different. It's pretty different. But this is one that a lot of people probably never heard of. Kiss's Destroyer album. And this is no jacket. Don't have the jacket. It was a loose album. And my wife has these, and this is what she does when there's no jacket. Because we get a bunch that are loose when we buy out lots sometimes. The Destroyer album. Not a huge fan of Kiss, honestly. Not a huge fan of Kiss. Kraftwerk. The Computer World album. One of the originators, honestly, of the sort of techno sound. Because they started in 1970. 1970. This album I need to replace. Because the album itself is damaged. And I was looking for a copy of this at the last record show that I attended, my wife and I, and somebody got it ahead of me. He just got ahead of me and picked up the only one of these at the record show. And you know, hey, first come, first serve. It is what it is, but I still got my eye out to replace this one because it's a piece broke out of it. Where the hell is it? See? You can't listen to the first song. Come on. We got some other Kraftwerk here. There's The Man Machine, which is a pretty decent album. I like The Man Machine. I like this one. Autobahn, which is probably the best known Kraftwerk album and the easiest to find. My least favorite. My least favorite. I'm not feeling this one. I'm not feeling this one actually. And then one more from Kraftwerk, and this is the Radioactivity. Get it? Radioactivity. This one's a decent album too. I know a lot of you are probably not familiar with Kraftwerk. There is Led Zeppelin's fourth album. The fourth album. And this is actually a repress. This is a more modern pressing of the fourth album. And you probably recognize some of the tracks that are on that. You know, Black Dog. What do we got? Rock and Roll, The Battle of Evermore, Stairway to Heaven. There's a lot of very recognizable Led Zeppelin tracks on here. The Manhattan Transfer. This is a very strange album. And I'll tell you why it is. The reason that I got this one is because Twilight Zone is on here. Okay? And the Twilight Zone is a really well-known disco track from the 70s. It's fun. It's a fun track. Okay? And Shelby Rockstar says Kraftwerk gave us Gary Newman and Tubeway Army ? I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure. But on this, and this is of course the best of the Manhattan Transfer. The Manhattan Transfer are crooners who sing wartime era songs. So, I mean, they'll be crooning 40s songs like Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. And the whole album is like this, but then there's the Twilight Zone. There's a disco track, and it's like, where the hell did that come from? And they're not bad for their 40s crooning, but you know, the Monkees. Monkees are an incredible band, underrated, honestly, kind of almost forgotten at this point, the Monkees. People forget how huge they were. You know, you're looking at the originators of the music video. Historically speaking, they were the first ones. I mean, you had music on television, but they were the first ones to try to create a story or a madcap sort of filming structure based around a song on their television show, which of course the show was designed to promote the records. When they released their album, when they first came out, they outsold the Beatles. They knocked the Beatles out of #1. People forget that. People forget that. And Robert says that they sing their own stuff. Yes, they did. The thing with the Monkees, though, and what ruined them and why they lost their contracts and everything. And I forget which ones. Here you see David Jones, Mike Nesmith, Peter Tork, and Mickey Dolenz. I think, off the top of my head, I want to say it was Mike and Mickey who did this. Okay? They could sing, but they were not what you would call top-notch musicians. So they weren't that great with the instruments. And for that purpose, the producers wanted to maintain a certain amount of creative control. And they said, all right, you know, you go out in concert, you do whatever the hell you want. But when we're in studio, we've got to do it our way, and you're not playing your own instruments, okay? and two of them were fine with it. I think it was David and Peter. Like I said, I saw a documentary on it. I'm not 100%. I could be mixing them up. But the other two were like, we're the stars, we'll do whatever the hell we want. And they kept pushing, 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 and doing weird projects. And they did a movie that was just incredibly bizarre, where they all commit suicide at the end and whatever. And people just, the public lost interest. And the studio cut them loose because it was getting weird. And they had so much potential. And I like the Monkees music, the original Monkees stuff. And I remember watching the show in reruns in the 70s. You know, it used to come on in the early afternoon on weekdays, you know. But there's a lot of songs here that if you heard them, it would click. You'd be like, I know that song, you know. It was fun, strong 60s vibe. They they destroyed their own careers. Mott the Hoople, All the Young Dudes album, which this is the best rendition. This is one of the rare examples of doing a cover song and having it come out better than the original version. Because the original All the Young Dudes was done by David Bowie, and it's all slow. It's kind of like a ballad. It doesn't click. Mott the Hoople, their version was spot on. They did a great job with All the Young Dudes. Plus, this is a cool album. There's some good stuff on here. Mott the Hoople, another group that people have just totally forgotten about over the years. I love all the old stickers on the cellophane wrap, because this is the original cellophane wrap, and here you got the special $5.79. We've got your music and the nice price and all of those extra little bits of history stuck to the outside of the album. This one's, the jacket's in terrible shape. I got this just recently. Jacket's in terrible shape. The vinyl is really good. And this is Mr. Rogers' Let's Be Together Today. You see some kid scribbled all over it. It's got a price tag. So the jacket's kind of rough. You want your heart broken today? Listen to this album. Because, man, it brings you back. Mr. Rogers, what, 31 seasons on television with 28 to 30 episodes a season, like a traditional television season used to be back when we were kids. You know, now a TV season's like 6 episodes or something. It's pathetic. Back then it was 24 to 36 episodes. That's 895 episodes over 31 years. And he's kind of been canceled. He's been canceled because a lot of his music is gender affirming. Even on the back here, let me see. Everything Grows Together. What You Do, and Parents Were Little Once Too. Very traditional gender roles described in those songs. So, and he's like the most honest, gentle presentations on television in history. Yeah, let's just erase Mr. Rogers. But yeah, if you grew up in that era, this'll break your heart. And Eric says, and like Jim Henson, Mr. Rogers wasn't a fan of licensing. Correct. You know, I have some toys from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood from Ideal, and they only released them once and in limited quantities in like 1977. It's impossible to find that stuff. But yeah, this one will soften you up if you listen to it. Nectar. There's another band that no one ever heard of. They had a few albums, and the album, again, this is another like rock opera. The whole album merges together. All the songs go together, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff, and it's themed, it's fun. There's actually 2 albums in here, because this one doesn't have a jacket. Remember the Future by Nectar. That's not the whole band. There's a few extra people in there. I recommend Nectar. Another forgotten classic. This is the Down to Earth album. If you've never heard of Nectar, You might want to listen to a few of their tracks just to check them out. Nirvana, and for the sake of Screwtube, we'll cover that up. And the Dreamtime says the mythical Mr. Rogers playset in a sales catalog, but never found, I think. I've seen bits and pieces of the playset, and the finger puppets from it turn up from time to time on eBay. But I've never seen one complete. I've never seen the box for it in searches or in person. I have the trolley in the box, and I have 2 out of 3 of the Ideal hand puppets in the box. I'm missing the Lady Elaine Fairchild. But, you know, Nirvana, they only had 2 studio albums, I believe, and they're one of the last memorable bands. I think a lot of the people producing music since at least the mid to late 90s on, they don't have the staying power that everyone else has enjoyed over the last century. You know, because as they say, the musician may be dead, but the music lives. I don't think today's music's going to live. Orpheus. And this is psych. This is what they call psych music. And Eric says, what do you think of the Doors? I like the Doors. Some of their stuff, I don't care for all of it, but I like the Doors. Orpheus is a psych album, that type of psychedelic sound. And there's some good stuff on here, like what is it? Constitution Alley is on here. The Dream is on here. There's some good stuff. It's a genre that's not very well appreciated anymore, except by those hardcore audiophiles. Planets, here's another group people probably never heard of. And it's an 80s, this is classic 80s sound. Okay, you probably wouldn't recognize anything on here. But when you listen to this album, it's like time traveling to the 80s. It just feels like the 1980s. There's no other way to explain it. There's no other way to explain it. It feels like the 1980s. Even though, yeah, this is a 1980. I think this album in particular was released in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. It's like watching Beverly Hills Cop. Just brings you back. The Process. This is bizarre. That's The Process and the Do-Rags. That is the name of the band. The Process and the Do-Rags. And they are what? They are Too Sharp. Oh my God. And it's about as odd as you would expect it to be. Again, this is another one that'll take you right back. Because it feels like a total 80s sound listening to this album. You really get that vibe. The Dreamtimes says, I'm old. I lost interest in most popular music after 1990. I feel you. I get it. It changed too much. Some Rolling Stones. And of course, this is the Satanic Majesty's, what was it? Satanic Majesty's Request album. And this is the original pressing. This is a first pressing, lenticular cover. The cover is a little rough. The vinyl is like clean as a whistle though. Plays really well. Bizarre album. Has some good stuff on here like 20,000 Light Years from Home, She's a Rainbow, stuff like that. And then Rolling Stones Through the Past Darkly, Big Hits Volume 2, which has 2,000 Light Years from Home again. But, you know, Honky Tonk, Ruby Tuesday, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Paint It Black, stuff like that. Mother's Little Helper, a lot of songs you would recognize. So I am a fan of the Rolling Stones. Their edge is gone. I mean, they really should have long since retired. And I don't think they've produced, actually, right here, I don't think they've had, because there's an edginess to the Rolling Stones that when you listen to it and when you see the band, even, that's not there anymore. And I think this particular album, the Undercover album, is the last time they had that edginess. And, Undercover of the Night, She Was Hot, Too Much Blood. Some good stuff on here. Undercover of the Night, great music video if you've never seen it. It tells a whole story. It tells a whole story. And there was some controversy around it too, because it plays out like a rated R action film with, shooting and blood and everything. Sandy Nelson, Drums Are My Beat. And it is primarily drums. But it's pretty good. I got a kick out of this. Drums Are My Beat. Yeah, I went there. Sesame Street Fever. Sesame Street Fever. Which is made to look like the Saturday Night Fever album that was produced by and featured the Bee Gees from the Saturday Night Fever film starring John Travolta. And you can see the lengths that they went to try to emulate that album, which of course they did because the Bee Gees also produced this one. More specifically, Robin Gibb was involved in the production of this album, and he sings on two of these tracks. I believe it's the Sesame Street Fever main song and Trash. But there's some, and the rest of the songs are basically them, the puppeteers re-singing some of their classic songs, but to a disco track. For example, a C is for Cookie, You Got a Meeting a Disco Cookie, which is hilarious. And another Sesame Street in here. Sing, the hit songs of Sesame Street. And this is a 1974 album, and it has their late 60s and early 70s most popular songs on it. Just like with the Mr. Rogers, you want your heart broken today? Listen to this. Because Sesame Street is long since dead as far as I'm concerned. And the Dreamtime says, I forgot about that one, Disco Muppets. Absolutely. It's a fun album. It just is. I'm all about that. I just want to enjoy my music. As you can see, this is the other records that are available. All of this. That was the thing in the 70s. You produced albums. And Sesame Street had a ton of them, but this one plays a lot of the basics, the Sesame Street theme, the long version, which most people have never heard, Sing, the original version of Being Green, I Love Trash, Rubber Ducky, the ABC song for Big Bird, and so on. Nobody. There's some great stuff on here. And it takes you back because, as far as I'm concerned, Sesame Street put their first nail in the coffin when Elmo came on the scene. It was never the same. Now it's just flash and bang and loud and flashing lights and bullshit. But back then, the show had a lot of soul, and you can feel it listening to this album. It reminds you. It's Snap. It's Snap. World Power. Snap. One of the last, again, true hip hop albums. Snap. The Power. I got the power. Oops, Upside Your Head. Cult of Snap. This is just a fun album. Again, one of the last, in my opinion, true hip hop albums, along with De La Soul, before hip hop just became shake your ass and I'm gonna put a cap in your ass and I want to smoke crack and whatever, just trash. One of the innovators of rap and hip hop. This is the Sugar Hill Gang, and I've got a couple here. This is a single of the Rapper's Delight album, which, you know, this is a very long, the original version is pretty long. And the significance of the Sugar Hill Gang and that album cover is just absolutely ridiculous. Don't they look silly? They were the first, they may not necessarily have officially been the quote first so called rappers, but they were the first ones to be mainstream. I remember this playing on the radio when I was a kid. The only rap song on the radio, period, unless you want to count, A Boy Named Sue by the Man in Black. For those of you who know Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue is really kind of like country rap, if as it were, but it wasn't thought of in terms of rap. This is the first mainstream rap album, and it's so interesting what happened with these guys. You want to talk about being done dirty. By the time the producer was done with them, they didn't even have the rights to their own names. It was insane what they did to these guys. And then here's the Sugar Hills Gang's greatest hits. The 15-minute version of Rapper's Delight on this one. And Apache, a song that they don't like to play anymore. This is just fun. It's back from when rap was still fun, instead of just being lewd and disgusting and sexually explicit. And this is a single. This is a single from Sugar Hill Records. And it has the West Street Mob's Let's Dance on it, which is a really fun track. It's a cool track. It's fun. Another one that my wife did for me, thank you, LPH, Three Dog Night, the Golden Biscuits album. One, Easy to Be Hard, Mama Told Me Not to Come, Eli's Coming, Your Song. Three Dog Night, decent band. Really decent band. One-man band. You didn't write it out like this for me on the Kiss album, but that's okay. Some soundtracks back here. 2001: A Space Odyssey. The artwork on this cover is fantastic. Look at this. Look at the artwork. And Dreamtimes says everyone chases and collects the main stuff when there are so many hidden treasures. Yeah, there truly are. And that's why, you know, I pointed out, like, for example, the planets. Nobody knows who the planets are. But, man, that will take you right to the 80s. Like a heartbeat. It'll take you right to the 80s. So I primarily, I'm not looking for the big sexy necessarily, but I want the stuff that just appeals to me, that I listen to it and I'm like, wow, that's pretty damn good. This is a weird album though, because if you really paid attention to the soundtrack from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which by the way, this album's probably worthless. like you know, Dreamtimes was just kind of saying, he says everyone chases and collects the main stuff. Yeah, but it's so eerie. It's so eerie. It's like having a Halloween album. Very spooky music on this. The soundtrack from American Gigolo. Here's another one that's probably not worth anything. but, and I think Blondie's Call Me and Cheryl Barnes' Love and Passion are the only two songs on the album, if I remember correctly, that have lyrics at all. However, this is the only extended version of the Blondie's Call Me you're going to find. This is the long playing version of Call Me. And you can't get that on Blondie's other tracks, I don't believe. And the Love and Passion, really good track, even though there's hardly any lyrics in it. It's pretty decent. Pretty decent. Oh, there's Raccoon. Glad you could make it. The soundtrack from The Black Hole. Really excellent soundtrack from a historically significant film that it's a cult classic now, but kind of flies under the radar. You know, this is the last American film to have an overture. Last American film to have an overture. And the first American film, or the first film period, to incorporate computer graphics, which is only in the intro. The rest of the film is shot with practical effects and models. But the intro uses computer graphics, and it's the first time in history it had ever been done in a movie. But the music from this, and it does start even with the overture, it's right there. The music from this, symphonically speaking, is outstanding. If you're into like symphonic soundtracks, I really highly recommend The Black Hole. Now here we go. A Charlie Brown Christmas. Vince Ghirardelli Trio. Gold foil edition. This is a new album, but it's an original soundtrack from the original television special. I'm a big fan of the Peanuts. Another dying franchise. It's kind of fading away. Bound to happen eventually. All of those newspaper strip characters are dying. I know they tried to bring back Garfield just recently. I don't know how well that's going to work out. But, you know, we'll see. Hold on a second. Oh, in there. Because Dreamtime says many songs are only found on soundtracks. It's surprising they didn't put them in the artist's albums. Correct. Like there's a song from, I think it's the worst rap album in history. Worst rap album in history is Mr. T's album. Mr. T did a rap album in the 80s, and he had 2 music videos out of that album. It's absolutely wretched. Worst rap album ever made, officially, that was produced by an actual record company. It was Mr. T's rap album. But there is a song on there, I believe it's from New Edition. And to get the original copy of that album is the only place you're going to find that song. It's never been reproduced. But yeah, big fan of the Peanuts. And it's good music. The soundtrack from the Close Encounters. Again, really good musical score. Good symphonic music. The Crow, one of the last of true soundtracks, because they have soundtracks nowadays with a mixture of music, but it's not a mixture of modern music. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, has great music on it, but it's all music from the 70s and 80s because, quite frankly, they probably couldn't find any modern music that was halfway decent. The Crow used music from the era that the movie came out in, but it's good stuff. Burn by The Cure, Golgotha, Tenement Blues by Machines of Loving Grace. I mean, there's some great stuff on here. After the Flesh by Life with a Thrill Kill Cult. And another one, I don't have it, but another one that's really good is the original motion picture soundtrack from Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And let me see a couple of... Dreamtime says he admits he bought albums for the cover or novelty. Mr. T would fit that definition. And Eric Peters says, I read it was part of Madonna's negotiations to be in Dick Tracy for her to be able to put the music on her own self-titled album. I wouldn't be surprised. And Raccoon Eye says Mr. T couldn't have been worse than the football team's rap videos. It's about that bad. But Mr. T stayed in character doing the album. Because, you know, the rough and tough voice is not his actual voice. You know, it's Mr. T. You know me, as you can see. I rap definitely. It's awful. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's about that bad, Raccoon. Yeah, I don't have Breaking 2. Another really cool album. This is fun. There's good stuff on here. There's some really good stuff on here. You know, the Breaking, There's No Stopping Us, Freak Show on the Dance Floor, Bodywork, a lot of great, like, hip-hop style early 80s stuff. The heavy metal soundtrack. I had a time tracking this one down at the record show. But the heavy metal soundtrack, again, from back when the soundtracks meant something. Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, Cheap Trick, Devo, and on and on and on. Double albums. And WCWF fan, he says, I love how you did Mr. T. I pity the fool. And Dreamtime says, I'm glad they bring those older songs to be rediscovered by the next generation. My Redbone album was suddenly known by my young nieces due to Galaxy soundtrack. Redbone the band? Yeah, Redbone was pretty good. Not Leon Redbone, right? I like Leon Redbone too. Everybody's forgotten about him. There's the Saturday Night Fever album. There's the Saturday Night Fever album, everybody. Here's the, pull that Sesame Street back up. There you go. Yeah, Dreamtime says, yes, come and get your love. Yeah, they were all Native Indians, Native American Indians. And they would do a Native performance before they started when they were in concert. I saw them on Midnight Special. And Warhead says, just got here, but you got the Velvet Underground and Nico. I don't have it. It might not here anyway. It might be in the might be with my wife's collection, or in the outer room, because we got like about 2,000 albums out there. I'm just going through the stuff that I got in the office. The classic Saturday Night Fever album. And again, there's some great stuff on here. Good music, a lot of fun. Really tough story and tough lesson in the movie. My wife didn't care for the movie. The soundtrack from Star Blazers, and this is a Japanese pressing from the late 70s. Again, really fantastic symphonic music. This is from back in the day when a cartoon show invested in the music. They invested in the music, and they used the whole symphony, and they wrote music for this show, and it's damn good. It really is. Just like G.I. Joe. If you listen to the incidental music from the show G.I. Joe from Sunbow, it's a symphony. It's good. Transformers, not good. But then in the second season of Transformers, they started using G.I. Joe's music because it's still Sunbow. Eric Peter says, I also feel there are fewer music themes. John Williams, Danny Elfman can't remember a movie that had such memorable themes, such as Batman, Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Very true. Oh yeah, Dreamtime says Akira soundtrack. Yeah, that's pretty good too. Star Wars. This one I had also as a child. which I purchased myself from a local Woolworths. I purchased from a local Woolworths. And I must have wore this album out as a kid. As well as this one, which has basically more of the same. More of the same. Actually, there's a lot more music on this one than there was on the other album because this is a double album set. And the Warriors soundtrack, which has a few songs on here, songs on here that would surprise you. And what was that? Robert says, what about Transformers the movie soundtrack that had a lot of tunes? Yes, it did, because they redid the music again for the Transformers film. But there's the Warriors, In the City, Love is a Fire, In Havana, Nowhere to Run. And Dreamtime says the Warriors is a tough find. This one we found in a thrift store. The theme track from Xanadu. It was a disco-themed movie. And again, you know, I like disco as much as I like any of the other ones. And there's, I think, one song on here, or one song that was in the movie that's not on this record, and that's the final scene where all the genres are coming together. I don't think it's on this record. And then the last one in the basket is the Electric Lunch LP from WSHE Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Sometimes this is something that radio stations used to do, where they would put together their own mix, and this is all like some early 70s stuff on here. Happy to 60s and 70s. Green Tambourine, I Think We're Alone Now, Laugh Laugh, Itchy Coo Park, Incense and Peppermints. It's mostly 60s. But radio stations used to put together their mixes, their suggestions, and some of these albums, because it's original music, it's like a mixtape. These are pretty good. A lot of those are pretty good. Let me see. I have that. I don't have time to sift through this. Yertle the turtle. I don't have time to sift through this, but I know I got that Mr. T here. Here it is. I wanted to show it. This is the album I was talking about. Oh, he ran out of steam. Sleep well, monkey. It's the Mr. T's Be Somebody album. And you can find the music videos on YouTube. And they did, I think it's Treat Your Mother Right and I Am Somebody. But yeah, look up, I'm pretty sure at least Treat Your Mother Right. I know that there was a couple of music videos done. Treat Your Mother Right. Look it up on YouTube. And, you know, have a bag handy. And Dreamtime says I have to track down that now. Yeah, because it's Mr. T, this can be a tough one. But let me see which song it is. Yeah, this is it. This is the one I was talking about. It says Peer Pressure. I don't know how well you can see that. Peer Pressure, new edition. This is the only way to get this song, is off this album. To get that new edition song. It was done explicitly for this album, but it's a different studio or something. It's just some kind of licensing problem. And it's never been reproduced as far as I know. I mean, it's not a spectacular song, but if you wanted to hear it, this is the only way to do it. Oh, and Blue Splash says, just got home from toy hunting. Got a ton of things. Good. Good, and watch out for it. I was going to announce it on the weekly roundup coming up on Friday or tomorrow, because a lot of you know it. We do modern weekly roundup. Um, Big Bad Toy Store is doing another clearance wipeout, like up to 40-50% off. A lot of the new stuff, you know, Star Wars and Masters of the Universe and all the stuff you've been scrambling for is now dirt cheap. You recall that Sunman that nobody could find? It's like $6 on there now. So yeah, we're having another wipeout. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the only way that you can get that particular song. He only actually raps on 3 of these tracks, I think, 3 or 4 of them. They're terrible, and a couple of these are like a boys' choir. It's really weird. But yeah, this is one of the worst rap albums ever done. Easily one of the worst rap albums ever done. But there you go. And I only have it because it's Mr. T too, I admit it. Because I listened to it once, it was enough. It's like, oh my God, I just can't do this again. I don't know if anybody recognized any of that stuff or has these albums, or maybe me talking about some of them might inspire somebody. So I'll put some of these back in here now, get my crate filled back up. There's a few things here that you may not have ever heard of, and or you might have forgotten about. So I start running them back in here. Again, that's a heartbreaker. It's a sad thing when you can listen to a vintage children's album like that, and it'll just soften you up. Because so much has changed. So much has changed. Actually, that should have gone right there. That's why I left that out. And like I said, this is not all my albums. This is just this one too, real tearjerker. It's so gentle and honest. It just is. And he's all but faded away. I know they did the movie with Tom Hanks. I didn't see it. But he's just kind of fading away, Mr. Rogers. And listening to that record, which has a lot of his early stuff on it, it's just like, wow, I just remember watching that show. I just remember watching that show and how good it was. What a great presentation. Cocktail Girls there. Jethro Tull. Grassroots. Stuff that people have forgotten about. Again, Grace Jones. Most of the album's not that great. But, some of her stuff can be tough to find, too. Grace Jones's albums. Gene Autry, most people don't even know who that was, and he was legendary. But hope you all enjoyed hanging out with us today, or me today and us today. Us being the people who have been watching the live portion. Of course, this will be saved, or should be. I did have one disappear last week, which was frustrating. But ScrewTube, what are you going to do? Again, our tastes, my wife and I both, they're all over the place. We don't listen to just one style or genre of music. We listen to lots of different kinds of music. We enjoy all kinds. And Dreamtimes says Mr. T has a Be Somebody VHS tape. That's probably a VHS of the music video. And LP is a bit pricey for just grunts and giggles. Yeah. And Blue Splash loves Mr. T. And Dreamtime says the Gene Autry Western Heritage Museum in Los Angeles is worth a stop, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. Again, you can catch us on the weekly roundup tomorrow. And we might do a live stream on Saturday. But also, there is supposed to be a vintage toy yard sale on Saturday that we may go and check out. And of course, if we do, we will film it so that we can share it with everybody on the channel. So I'll go ahead and wrap up. Say, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope you enjoyed hanging out and just talking vinyl. I'm sorry I couldn't spin any of it for you, but ScrewTube will bury me alive. The law says that, for like commentary purposes, like if I'm just talking about it, I should technically be able to spin up to a certain number of seconds. Try telling that to ScrewTube's algorithm. They'll bury me alive. It just doesn't work. But anyways, hope you enjoyed hanging out and just talking vinyl and, chatting and whatever. There's another look at Monkey. Uh-oh. Orientation got weird. And we will do this again sometime soon. I will talk to you all later.